Good morning, paddlers. This is Gary again with another exciting CCRAP paddling video from the California Center for Research on Advanced Paddling, and we are certainly getting advanced today as I am here in beautiful Ballona Creek in Los Angeles. I'm passing under the Lincoln Boulevard Bridge. It's Lincoln Boulevard in Westside Los Angeles, north of Los Angeles and Malibu, and south of Los Angeles down by the South Bay. It becomes the Pacific Coast Highway, which is directly ahead of us, about 2,500 meters, 2.5 kilometers actually. Okay, so what we're going to do today is pretty exciting. This is the second in a series of videos. I think there will be at least 4 that explores feathering and unfeathering and all of those types of things. The first video, which I released on the Surfski Kayak Facebook group, had to do with feathered paddling, which means when you have an offset between the 2 blades, which I have here. This is as extreme as you want to get. The basic lesson of that video was that if you want to paddle with most feathered, actually really feathered, meaning that the top blade is parallel, slicing into the wind, right? You're going to want a 90 degree. This should be 90 degrees, like that. Okay. And even though this may, these blades may have less resistance against the wind broadside than the older Euro flat paddles would, you're still going to have more air resistance going forward than if it's wet feathered like this, right? And you can look at the fan demo to see that. So the basic lesson there was that if you really want to maximize your feather, slice through the air, right? You're paddling fast, so you got headwinds or whatever, you're going to need, you would want 90 degrees. The trouble with 90 degrees is that it requires some wrist action. So I have this set up for right hand control. My right hand knuckles are lined up with the top edge of the paddle blade, and you can see that no problem paddling the control hand, right? Everything works just fine. I just keep a nice grip, leave it where it is, right? But you can see there's a problem here, right? Now, because that blade is coming in upside down, catching water from the sky, concave up. And I need to turn that all the way around. Well, not all the way around, but at least 90 degrees, right? And lifting my right hand, the paddle height takes care of some of that. But if I'm coming up to my eyes, which is about as high as I want to go, you can see it still doesn't make it. So I have to extend my wrist. So for me to be able to do this, now my left hand is the release hand. You can see I need to have a significant, right, extension. This is extension, this is flexion of my control hand. And when I was doing that, even at 60 degrees feather, I developed pain in my right wrist. So my wrist didn't like being extended, applying force on the paddle. Didn't like that, okay? So the lesson of that video was, well, one of the lessons. The other is that if you want to eliminate that problem, you need to reduce your angle probably to 60 or even a little bit below. Let me put it on 50. Now you can see I don't get that same nice feathered angle. It's not completely feathered as it's going in, right? On either hand, right? But now just raising my control hand, which is still the right one, takes care of squaring the other blade, okay? So now I can paddle with 2 wrists that are completely neutral at all times. And I'm giving up some of the feather for that, okay? So there you go. Now we are going to, with that in mind, we are going to go to completely unfeathered, okay? And this is how kayaking started. If you look at even today, Greenland paddles and Alaskan or Aleutian paddles, they are unfeathered. There is no blade offset. The blades are in the same plane. And if you're paddling at a low angle like this is what you can do. You don't have to worry about doing any kinds of much wrist action or release or control. You just hold on both sides and there you go. Now if you take a beginner, a novice, and stick them in a boat, any kind of boat, and if you give them an unfeathered paddle, they will just naturally square this and they will be paddling at a low angle, most likely bicycling with their arms, right? Sort of like this, not doing much rotation, but it's just sort of natural to hold onto the paddle on each end. So this is one way of paddling unfeathered. I'm going to call this dual hand control or synchronous control because both hands are maintaining control grip on the paddle shaft at all times. And that seems to work okay. I don't see anything weird happening with my wrist. But now watch what happens as I go higher. I don't know if you can see it in the video. I'm trying to paddle really slow so you can see it or stop it. And I can make that more visible by just raising my hand as I did before. If I want to keep this in control, square, right? If I just raise my hand, what happens? It loses the square. So to adjust for that, I have to flex my wrist. So you will see me each hand flexing the top wrist. And the higher you go, the more you're going to have to flex that wrist and apply power. So there's no neutral wrist there. So that may not be a problem, right? I think that applying force with a flex wrist is less problematic than applying force with an extended wrist for a number of reasons. Again, just to make sure you understand what I'm talking about here, right? This is flexing, flexing. This is extending, extending, okay? And there's a number of reasons why I think it's better if you're going to be not neutral to go with flexed rather than extended. And that is when you are at flexed a little bit, you are sort of in the middle of your range, right? You're not at the limit of anything, right? And the blade is pushing you back to where you would be neutral, right? So, and you are stronger flexing than extending, although that's probably not relevant here. When you're paddling extended, you're at the limit, right? Right? So you're more likely to provide some damage to tendons and ligaments in this position than here, where you can use your muscle to stabilize all of that. So it may be that though we hear about people getting injury and discomfort paddling feathered with a high feather angle, right, and having the paddle like this, I know of no one who's had problems like this, but of course nobody's done that research. But I don't think it's going to be as problematic. But, so when you go up, so this is a way, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Let me continue on that string. So, you start off, if you want to be unfeathered, just paddle low, unfeather your blade, and then as you gradually increase the angle, your wrist should automatically adjust. Concentrate on getting the blade in square. Do what you need to do with the top hand, right? Each hand is controlling at all times, but really the control happens when it's at the top, right? And there you go. You don't need to release the blade anywhere, but you are going to have to flex your top hand alternately in that stroke. And that may work fine for you, and there's really no reason then to mess with that. However, if you're coming from feathered paddling, you're already used to having one control hand and a release hand. So what happens if I try to do that when I get higher with unfeathered? Something nice happens. Now I'm going to control with my right hand, but I'm going to release my left, just as I was doing when I was paddling feathered, right? And I can sort of release my fingers here to show that I'm releasing that. Now, you can see I still have to do a bit of a flex on the control hand, right, to get the blade square on the other side. But there's no reason why I have to do anything to flex with the release hand, right? I'm releasing. So the release hand never has to be anything but neutral at the top, right? So now I've cut the flex in half. I have one hand flexing, a little bit at the top, right? My control hand, the other one, not at all. So it would make sense to do that. Now, one of the things, so this is what I'm going to call one-hand control, unfeathered paddling. And it works fine. I'm doing the same thing I would do feathered in terms of having one hand controlling, one hand releasing. The only difference is that as I get higher, I need to flex instead of extend. And I think you'll do that just naturally as you square the release hand blade. All right, so there you go. Now, if you have wanting to go from feathered to unfeathered because you have pain in your right wrist, you were perhaps paddling at a really high angle, 90 or 85, and you had to do that extension, you might say, well, I want to give that right wrist a break. I don't want it to be flexing or extending any. I want it neutral at all times. Solution, remember the release hand never has to flex. I mean, it never has to flex or extend. It can stay neutral at all times. So, oh man, I'll try releasing the right and controlling with the left. See how that works. And you say, oh, that's heaven. That's so nice. I can paddle at any angle I want here now. My left wrist now, of course, has to flex at the top. But that has been getting a free ride up until now because I've been paddling feathered right hand control. It's always been neutral, so let it do a little flexing, which may not be so bad. And then you can say, well, if the left wrist doesn't like that for some reason, okay, right now let me open my fingers to show left release, I can go back to left hand control. So I can transfer the control from one side to the other, from one paddling session to the other, or even within the same paddling session. So now I'm right hand control. I'll try to open my left hand to show. Now I'm left hand control. And that released hand that has the fingers out is neutral at the top. Now this is where it gets really exciting, but let me recap a little bit. So we had two-hand control, dual-hand control, synchronous control. Both hands, as you go up, have to flex because they're both control hands. Now we've gone to one-hand control, as for feathered paddling, and the control hand has to flex a little bit, but the release hand does not. And now we discovered that we can actually move control from one to the other. So I'm going to do 5 strokes left-hand control. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right-hand control. 1. You can see my left hand opens up. It is now neutral at the top. 4, 5. Okay, let me make that interesting. So there's an insight here. Let me see if you get it. I could do 2 left-hand control. Oh, let's say 3. Now I'm doing right-hand control. Open up my left hand. 3. Okay, left-hand control. Open up the right hand. Left-hand control for 3. Right-hand control for 3. Hey, how about just 2? Okay, left-hand control for 2. Right-hand control for 2. You can see my left-hand control for 2. Right-hand control. Now, this is the holy CCRAP moment. I'm transferring control from one hand to the other, going in the same stroke. I mean, just going from one hand to the other. And I can do that every 5 strokes, every 3, every 2. I could do it every 1 stroke. And that means my top hand would always be the release hand. There's no flexing required. how does that look? This looks like this. My top hand always released. Bottom hand is the control. Now that transfer of control is going to occur when the two hands are level. And you can see I got my knuckles lined up with each other, lined up with the top. The only time that really is going to happen is when both hands are about the same height. And that happens when this is coming up to here. So you could actually think of a little ball rolling back and forth here, and that's showing you where the control is going and where it's going away from. The ball rolls away from the hand you're going to release to the one you're going to be controlling. And you can see, there you go. So this is what I call alternating hand control or asynchronous control. Both hands are being used to control, but only when they are on the stroke side. And the top hand is always releasing. Look at that. So now I have a paddling style. This is the third one, which allows me to use any angle I want. High, super high, and the wrist lower, mid. The wrist is always neutral at all times, both hands. Isn't that cool? Now, the question I have there is, when people are paddling with zero feather and using a high angle, as we tend to do on surf ski and K1 certainly, what kind of control are they using? I doubt very much it's two-hand control, right? Because then both hands would have to be, you know, flexed at the top as it comes up. They are both control hands. And since most, I would imagine, who are doing unfeathered paddling are coming from feathered paddling, they're already used to having one control hand. I would bet most of them are doing one-hand control, which means that one hand has to be flexed a little bit, the control hand at the top. The other one, the release hand, never has to be flexed, right? That's my guess. And when I started investigating this, I had already been paddling unfeathered since 2018, which is like 4 years, and I had never really paid much attention to what I was doing. And what was I doing? I was doing right-hand control. And even though I have, with right-hand control, I have to flex a little bit with the wrist that was giving me problems, the pain still went away instantly. At least I think I was doing right-hand control at the beginning. I can't be sure. I may have to go back to some videos. But when I looked at it recently and discovered all this stuff, I was definitely using right-hand control. I could feel the shaft slipping through my left hand, not my right hand. So this is, and I can open up my control hand to show that, the release hand. So that's what I was doing. I bet most people are doing one-hand control, perhaps on the hand as they did when they were feathered. Now, since it's so easy to change control, if going to unfeathered from feathered doesn't get rid of your pain, take a look and see which is your control hand, which is your release hand. And if it's your right wrist, you were doing right hand control feathered. If you have pain or discomfort and it doesn't go away when you go unfeathered, think about changing your control to the left side and giving this hand, the one that is problematic, a free ride. Always, always neutral. Feels so great. Extend those fingers to see what it feels like, right? Now, why might you want to do the alternating control? Well, if you get some pain from flexing on the other side, you can do that. Now, one of the things that this does require some coordination. Whether you can do this coordination, right now I'm doing alternating hand control. At very high stroke rates, sprinting, I do not know. It may be possible, but it certainly is more complex and takes more coordination than one-hand control. One-hand control is set and forget, basically. I mean, you just, that's it, it's there. Or let me use left-hand control, right? That's there, and I just let my right hand always release. release, control. I mean, that's so easy, doesn't take any coordination, right? So you can do that easily, but if that doesn't feel good for you, I think it's worthwhile using alternating hand control. And of course in surfski we're not using really high stroke rates anyway, cadences, so it may be easy to do, and I really have no trouble using alternating hand control, and that's what I tend to do now that I've discovered this. Maybe if I had to do a real quick acceleration, you know, I might just sort of control now the right hand and feel a little bit more secure about doing that without having to get that switch at the right time. But try that out. So there you go. Let me summarize what we've been through. We're looking at unfeathered paddling. And let me summarize it by saying, looking at a progression if you want to try this, okay? So, as I said, put it on unfeathered. Go cold turkey unfeathered. Don't worry about, if you're going to decrease your feather angle a couple degrees every week, that makes no sense to me. You should go cold turkey on the feathering, but then gradually on the angle. If you can't do this unfeathered, coming from feathered at a low angle, I mean, any beginner can do this, okay? You can do it too. So I say start really low angle, all right? Look at the nice racing you can get from this. Start low angle, and then gradually bring the angle up. Two-hand control, all right? And you'll find as you do it gradually, you will have to start bending your top wrist. If you're going to stay at shoulder height, I mean, there's virtually no flex. There's virtually nothing happening there. Let me try to get the pedal back in, I'll stop. So if this is here, submerged, and I'm at completely square as it comes by here, and I'm at shoulder height, I mean, I'm not stopped. Wow, that is such a little bit of flex. You can see it. I mean, it is you can see through the glistening there that as I bring it up, I mean, it does flex, but it's tiny if it's at shoulder height. And I don't see that being any problem. As you get higher and you start getting up to high eye level, it's going to, of course, flex some more. So just gradually bring it up and see what it feels like with two-hand control as you bring up your paddling angle, your stroke angle, okay? And if that feels fine, you can stay there, but there's really no reason why you have to be flexing both hands. You've already coming from feathered paddling, you know how to keep one hand release hand, one hand control. So do that, all right? So now you may find, and this would work for me, I'm doing the same hand control I did when I was paddling feathered. As a result of that, my left hand still is always neutral, the release hand, and I have to do a little bit of flexing of my control hand. My pain went away that way. It wasn't a problem. If it didn't, then you can say, okay, let me switch control over to the other side. Now I'm controlling left. Right hand is neutral at all times. It's very happy wrist. Happy wrist. All right? Very nice. Left wrist now has to flex a tiny bit. And then for some reason, if I want to say, well, I don't like that left wrist flexing either, now we have the alternate control. All right? This is the one where you transfer control across the top. As the blade becomes parallel to the water, it goes from the hand coming up to the hand going down. And you can do this, and you can see by opening my hands, this is alternating control. All right? Again, whether you can do that sprinting, I don't think so. Maybe. I never paddle more than, you know, typically 75 strokes per minute. But if you're up to 90 and 100 and sprinting, that may not be possible. But you can always just go back to one-hand control again. And what's nice about this is that any angle works. if you're using alternate hand control, you really don't need it at the bottom. But anything from a high angle to a shoulder angle, it's all good. What you're paying for is that you're not getting your least resistance feather through the water, all right? But your bracing is better. But I'm going to save that for another video when we actually compare head-to-head feathered paddling with unfeathered and look at the advantages and disadvantages. So I hope you find that useful. I found this exploration quite fascinating to see all of the different kinds of strokes that I can use. And I mean, I can go to feathered left. Here's 60 degrees left hand control, you know, no problem, feels great. And there may be some reasons why I may want to shift control from one hand to other feathered, but this is on unfeathered. I shouldn't even talk about that now. Okay, so that's it for now. Let me know what you think. Give it a try. Oh, and your homework is to go to unfeathered paddling and do it cold turkey, cold unfeathered paddling. Cold turkey unfeathered, yes. Of course, a turkey without feathers is going to be cold, right? So that all makes perfect sense. And again, start it, both hand control like a beginner. Don't gradually decrease your feather angle. Go right to 0. See how easy that is to do. Gradually increase your paddling angle. See how that feels like on your wrists. You will naturally flex them a little bit at the top because both hands is controlled. And then go back to your old method of whichever hand you used to control before and release the other. So now I'm doing right hand control, unfeathered, and then practice both sides, okay? I'm right hand control, now I'm left hand control. You can see I'm opening my right hand. I'm right hand control, I'm left hand control. And then finally, to master all of this, give the alternating hand control a shot, okay? So if you set up taking 10 strokes right hand control, 10 strokes left hand control, as you move from one to the other, you'll find yourself making that transfer of control. And now you can do that every time and see how that works for you. Okay, that's enough for today as I get back out into the ocean here and may head out a little bit. Closing this video from the mouth of Bayona Creek at the breakwall of Marina del Rey. This is Gary with another CCRAP paddling video from the California Center for Research on Advanced Paddling. Thank you. Okay, so this is another little homework task, but only for those who have already learned to paddle unfeathered. Try to figure out, shouldn't be hard, which of the 3 styles of unfeathered paddling you're using. Are you using dual hand control, which requires control, grip, both hands at all times, and also requires a little bit of flexing of the wrist as each hand becomes the top hand? Or are you doing number 2, one hand control, which is similar to what you do paddling feathered? Or are you doing alternating hand control? 3 different ways. So the first part of your task is to figure out what you're doing naturally unfeathered. And I know Boyan is unfeathered, Oscar is unfeathered. A lot of people mention that they're unfeathered now. So try to figure out which of the 3 styles you're doing. And then if you are doing one style, try the others and see what they're like. Now, there's really no reason to do dual hand control, both hands at the same time. So if you're already doing that, you should try the one hand control and the alternating hand control. But if you're doing already, say, one hand control, try alternating hand control. And if you're doing alternating hand control, try one hand control, both right hand and left hand. If you're already using either one hand control or alternating hand control, I see no reason why you would ever want to do dual hand control of both hands. So that doesn't make any sense. So find out what you're doing and then explore the other types of control, and maybe you'll like one of those better. Let us know how that works. Okay, so there's a little addendum to the unfeathered paddling video for extra homework for people who are already unfeathered.